What is up, Mets'd listeners? Back here for episode number 72 of the Mets'd podcast. Of course, you're joined by your co-host, Giraffe Neck Mark Luino, here with James Shiano. Jeter had no range, talking about everything going on in the New York Mets world. There's a few things. I mean, we got a bullpen coach. The coaching staff is officially finished. We got Craig Bjornsson, not Bjornson, Bjornson. He's a real character. We're going to go a little deep dive into him as we always do. We're also going to talk about Jeremy Barnes, who's the assistant hitting coach that they now have. We're also going to talk about the labor negotiations because there have been some updates. So we might be looking at baseball sooner than we maybe once expected. Who knows? You'll hear what we have to say. As well as we have an interview with Nick Pollack of Pitcher List. He actually is Pitcher List. He's the guy. So make sure you guys stick around for that. It's a really good interview talking about the Mets pitchers, just a preview on them as a whole, as well as some fantasy baseball stuff because he's a big fantasy baseball guy, along with James. And that's pretty much it that we got here for you guys on this episode of the Mets'd podcast. So make sure you're following us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all our social media at Mets'd YouTube channel where we upload the video versions of all this Mets'd podcast. You can find us there. If you're listening to us, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you do, 5-star rating, 5-star review, whatever you want to do. It really does help us out. And that's the perfect time to bring in James. James, how you doing, man? What's up?
Good, man. Hanging out, Good day. Pretty normal. It's nice weather in New York today. Took a bike ride. It was cool.
Yeah, a little snow last night, technically, but we're
a little
bit. Never hurt anybody, but we ready to talk about a bullpen coach more than we probably ever will talk about him during the actual season?
Yeah, no, if you put it up as a deep dive, I don't think we have enough ready for a deep dive of him. We're just going to talk about him a little bit.
I think just having anything to say about Craig Bjornsson is going to be a deep dive in of its own because, again, he's a bullpen coach. I mean, Ricky Bones was the guy, the last few years? And I couldn't tell you.
Say again?
Ricky Bones.
It wasn't Bones?
No, it's pronounced Bones.
Wow, I kind of like that more.
Yeah, no, it's a little flair to it, but
I'd be like if my name was James.
James Shiano, yes. But Craig Bjornsson, I really want to say Bjornson badly. Craig Bjornsson came from the Astros. He's our bullpen coach. He's a bit of a character. Mm-hmm. And I like him. I like him just based on the fact that there's a video going around Twitter right now of him talking shit to Yankees fans, which is just hilarious because if you guys find it on Twitter, we're not going to quote everything in it, but he's going right back at them, tells them they've got small packages down there and they're soft. And basically everything you would want to see from a coach talking shit to Yankee fans, he was doing, and I love it.
Definitely. You want to hear a crazy stat about Craig Bjornsson?
Give it to me.
Not a stat, more like a fact. We have the same birthday.
You and Craig Bjornsson?
Yep, February 14th, me and Craig.
Nice difference of age, of course, but...
Of course, yeah, he's born in 1969. I was born in 1996. So honestly, right there, that's even kind of like, yeah.
Flipped.
Right there.
Nice. I like it. All right, Craig Bjornsson. That's our bullpen coach, and that is our deep dive on Craig Bjornsson because there is not much else to talk about with him.
No, and you also came from the Astros. He was most recently with the Red Sox. He jumped with Cora after 2017 and won actually the championship with the Astros 2017 and the Red Sox 2018. And because he jumped with Cora, I'm sure he also has a relationship with Joey, the Mets' new third base coach. So that's something.
I actually did not know that he was with the Red Sox. I thought he was straight from the Astros. That's pretty good.
No, Astros 2014, 2017, and Red Sox 2018, 2020.
Sounds like he's a winner.
Definitely a winner. And he's funny.
And if you can handle that Red Sox bullpen, which has been a mess for the last 3 years, you can handle this Mets one, no problem.
Even when they won the World Series, it wasn't a good bullpen.
No. So Craig Bjornsson, that's our bullpen coach. And then you have some stuff on Jeremy Barnes for us, who assistant hitting coach. Matt Eddy talked about him a little bit last week and some good stuff to say.
Yeah, Matt Eddy spoke very highly of Jeremy Barnes last week, who the Mets, I don't want to say appointed, or maybe gave a promotion to assistant hitting coach this week because he was working with player development last year. And as Matthew Eddy mentioned, that he had a big exit velocity initiative with the Mets organization, and they think they're going to reap a lot of benefits of that this season. But last season, he kind of got thrown into the fire a little bit and was just meant to be the director of player initiatives, which I don't know anything at all what that could possibly mean. Like, what's a player initiative?
Get to the field on time, eat well, and respect your parents. I don't know.
Like a player initiative from like the old days was like take a strike. Like that was a player initiative. I don't know what director of player initiatives possibly means, but he was a part of the shakeup that happened last year when Chili Davis was let go from his post as hitting coach, which we never put this together last season, but he was actually let go on the eve of the minor league season.
Oh.
So I think that was kind of meaningful with the timing, because everyone was like, why are you firing Chili Davis now? But I think they actually fired him then because they knew they had these other people in place who they would be comfortable enough elevating to where that was like the last day they thought they could do it. So that was interesting. But that brought Hugh Quattlebaum, as we knew, to the Mets hitting coach. It also brought Kevin Howard to the major league staff as the assistant hitting coach. Both of those guys were slated to work in player development along with Jeremy Barnes. Howard was supposed to be the farm director, and Quattlebaum was supposed to be a director of minor league hitting. So when both of those guys were elevated to the major league staff last year, Barnes basically jumped up 2 rungs and became just the czar. We've used that word a couple times, the Mets coaching staff, but basically the czar of hitting player development, which is something that him at the time, who's only 34 years old, was probably a little bit over his skis, but he did incredible there, and it made him good enough to be promoted to the major league staff this year. And he's going to work directly with Eric Chavez with the major league team.
Yeah, and isn't that, and Matt Eddy talked about how basically like the Mets were getting good exit velos, right? And he credited a lot of it to Jeremy Barnes and the fact that they were able to get those high exit velos, which, as we know around baseball, not just something that we care about, but everyone cares about, is those high exit velos. And for projecting and player success, the harder you hit the ball, the more successful you are going to be. Yeah,
there's an incredibly high correlation between your exit velocities and your propensity to get hits and extra base hits, or just your WOBA. But again, to use exit velocity WOBA, basically the harder you're going to hit the ball, the better your outcomes are going to be consistently. And him getting promoted now, and now Quattlebaum and Howard moving back to player development with the guy we've talked about a few times, Dan Schoenfeld, filling in there, means that they've kind of basically just realigned, like switched everybody to a different spot. Maybe after even seeing for a year how everybody performed in those roles. But I just still do think they're going to get a couple more guys to be in player development. I also think the Mets are probably in a position to hire a couple more coaches, because right now they only have 7 coaches on the major league staff, and that's Cora, Chavez, Kirby, Showalter, Sherlock, Bjornson, and Hefner. 7 coaches. Most teams have many more than that. Even last year, the Mets had between 9 and 10 at a given time, because Ricky Meinhold, who was the Mets minor league pitching coordinator, came up and worked with the staff for a certain series and certain stretches of time themselves. They let Brian Schneider and Jeremy Accardo go, and neither of them were replaced. So I think the Mets are in a position also to still hire a few more coaches, and that could happen in the future, because we saw a lot of teams like the Giants and the Rays and the Dodgers have tons of success in recent history with more coaches, having more coaches at their disposal. I think that's something that would benefit the Mets.
The quality control guys, right? Which is what Luis Rojas originally was, Mark Kotsay was before he just got the A's job. This seems to be like a hot spot for everybody.
Kotsay was never with the Mets. You mean just in general?
Just in general, yeah. No, not with the Mets.
And Schneider was that for the Mets last year, and he's not coming back. And Accardo, I think, was basically that, but for the pitching side.
Yes, yeah. And I know that he had some, I think, stuff going on too, Jeremy Accardo, that was a little off the field stuff. Not personal problems, but, actual issues going on there. But, those guys aren't back. Definitely could probably bring in a couple maybe young, fresh faces. I'm sure that they have some names in mind. It just seems like, again, there really is no particularly huge rush right now to bring in guys when we are still a pretty good chunk away from the season even beginning.
Definitely, especially because also you're so far away from the regular coaching hiring circuit that you're not going to be able to get accomplished people from other major league clubs. We mentioned last week, but the Mets ran into that with Ryan Flaherty and Andrew Bailey. So the Mets might even just go into the season with only 7 coaches, or maybe have a couple of these player development guys or minor league people from the minor league staff come up and do some rounds with the major league team. But still plenty of time. There's still no baseball. But there's one coach who the Mets did want to have on this staff, Buck Showalter specifically, to show there is more space and they are willing to bring on more people. And that's Brian Butterfield. And he's notable because he wasn't brought on simply because he wasn't vaccinated for COVID. And that was reported by Ken Rosenthal this week, which I thought was very interesting, because that was something that I think we've tied into some of the Mets player moves this offseason.
Yeah, it seemed like that was a point of contention last year, because the Mets were one of the teams, right, that weren't fully vaccinated, that had to still technically wear the masks and stuff, because there was just a lot of guys that weren't willing to get the shot.
And with not being over that vaccination threshold, you aren't allowed to do a lot of things on the road that the teams were who did have that threshold. Like basically the Mets weren't allowed to even leave their hotels without a given reason and a specific place to come back, like basically just to get a grocery or something. The Mets weren't allowed to go out to restaurants or do social things on the road that a lot of other teams were allowed to do. And if you do look how the Mets played last year, we mentioned it time and time again, how they had much more energy at home and how they kind of fed off that. We figured there was a Citi Field crowd, giving credit to ourselves and all you listeners out there. But at the end of the day, maybe there was something about the way the Mets lifestyles were being handled on the at home versus on the road.
Yeah, I mean, do we know, like, this seems to be a conversation that stopped now because there is no mandate or anything like that now anymore with vaccinations and stuff, but I'm assuming that the guys who aren't vaccinated are still unvaccinated, right?
We can assume that. We only knew who wasn't vaccinated on opening day last year, and a few of those guys were Jeff McNeil, Michael Conforto, among a few others, some coaches, some other players. I think J.D. Davis was also on that list, and possibly Nimmo makes sense.
Has to be Nimmo.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be shocked if it wasn't Nimmo. But it does kind of raise the question of how the Mets are going about their player movement this offseason when you look at that. And we don't know if any of those guys got vaccinated this year. Some of them could have, but the Mets still wound up being under the threshold only the entire year, one of the few teams who were. So that is a little, it's like a tidbit of interesting information that we would only give you guys because of the lockout.
Yeah, this actually has nothing to do with really anything, but we are starving for content that has anything to do with the Mets, and we technically got some with Brian Butterfield, who sounds like a fake person. That sounds like someone from MLB The Show who would be a coach. Yes,
this is your first base coach you hire all the way down the list when you don't have any money left for your coaching staff on MLB The Show, and he's been friends with Buck Showalter for a long time. They played minor league baseball together in the 80s. He was on his coaching staff with the Yankees and the Diamondbacks. These guys are very good friends, and Buck has said that if Butterfield does decide to have a change of heart, he's going to do everything he can to get him on the staff.
Which is just so funny because, again, we got to keep bringing it up. But Buck's like, I'm not just going to bring in my boys. And all he's done is brought in his boys.
I mean, you got to respect it. I'd probably do something similar if I was the manager of the New York Mets. But
and listen, I'm gonna give Buck some credit, too, because I think in the press conference with him and Billy Epler, they talked about analytics. And Buck was pumped about how big and how robust the Mets analytics department is. And he even gave credit and said part of the reason why he felt like he was limited or, held back in Baltimore was because they had basically nothing, and it didn't exist. So he's super excited to get in and work with these guys to figure out all the numbers and analytics, which is a huge sign. That's something that we had huge concerns about going into this season. So that's nice to at least hear him say.
Yeah, it was basically the only concern. I am happy you brought up that press conference with Buck and Epler, because that went right over my head when making this rundown. But it was cool to hear him talk about how excited he was to use the information. The fact that he's bringing in all of his friends who also seem to be excited to use the information. And they actually did say a lot during that press conference about like breadth of knowledge and diversity of thought. And I guess that's basically what they mean, bringing the old baseball with the analytics. That's how a lot of teams have been successful over the last few years.
Yeah, and like even talking to Trevor May, who I did something with recently, who hopefully we're going to get on the podcast very soon. I'm asking him, I better come on. I'm helping him out too. But he talked about how, like, from a player perspective, and maybe he'll be able to go a little more in depth on this when he comes on, because I'm going to be aggressive and say he's going to come on. But that it's not necessarily about using the numbers exactly. Like, he doesn't need Buck Showalter to physically tell him exactly the numbers, which I think me and you would both also agree that Buck Showalter shouldn't be the guy translating this information. No. But the fact that the organization from top to bottom has the same game plan and is under the same idea and is following the same structure, that's really important. And it, based on the conversation I had with him, maybe the Mets lacked that a little bit last year.
Definitely. It's about people being on the same page. It seems like the Mets last year weren't on the same page. And that does make sense, because I'm sure there were a lot of changes that happened very quickly within this organization. And you have to ease people into things like this. Like, you got to go into the pool by the steps sometimes. Sometimes you do want to jump in, but that's not for everybody. You just got to go in very slowly and make sure people are not overwhelmed.
And it seems like, at least for right now, the Mets are going to be close to being on the same page, which is a nice breath of fresh air that we haven't seen. Now, speaking of being on the same page, let's just flip scripts and go to the labor union or labor agreements. What's it called? Agreement?
Collective bargaining negotiation?
Yeah, collective negotiation. That's the word I'm looking for. I was looking for negotiation. Not a whole lot of, well, they are cautioning in there, but there's not a whole lot of agreeing going on, but still there's more than there was. We have got some big updates about what's been going on since last time we recorded. Things are moving forward instead of backwards, which is huge.
Definitely, and we do appreciate, we got some feedback this week about how people enjoyed that we went into it, so we're going to keep going into it as long as it happens, especially because it's the best news we have to talk about. But it seems like after consecutive days of meeting, which is that's a big step in and of itself for these two groups right here. Meeting on consecutive days, that's cool. But it seems like there are really two options right now. Either the owners are going to win in a definitive way, or we're going to miss baseball. And most people aren't going to like either of those, but it seems to be where we're heading right now.
Yeah, the owners seem pretty strong on every stance that they're going to take, and they've even taken some things back just because they're like, all right, you want to play hardball, we'll just take it away and we'll miss games. I don't like that. I want the players to still win, and I think the players deserve, like, the stuff that they're asking for, I don't think is asinine by any means. Like, the negotiation numbers that have come out, the players asked for what, $105 million for like pre-arbitration players, the top 30 in WAR or whatever it is, to split them amongst them, and the owners came back with 10. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, and we'll break down everything that happened right now in these two meetings. So first of all, meeting one that occurred on Monday, the players told the owners that, fine, we will not anymore use reducing free agency from 6 years to 5 years as part of this negotiation. The owners said thank you without offering concession back in return. And the players last month who wanted the revenue sharing number total that moved amongst the owners to drop to $100 million now said, we'll drop to $30 million. The owner said, okay, thank you, but $10 million is as low as we're going to go. So again, the players made 2 concessions. The owners both times just took them and said thanks. And then Dick Monfort, the asshole who owns the Colorado Rockies, complained, basically whined that you don't make that much money owning baseball teams, and that for some owners have had a lot of difficulty making money over the last 2 years because of COVID. I'm playing something even smaller than the world's smallest violin for poor Dick Monfort owning the Colorado Rockies, driving them into the ground year after year.
Yeah, that guy, hearing that guy have any opinion on baseball, it should be thrown away immediately. The fact that he's representing the owners should automatically mean the players are right, because that guy is a bona fide idiot.
He rolled up to the meeting in purple Rockies shoes. Did you see that?
No, is that true?
Yes.
Oh my God, that's
a matching purple tote.
A tote? He brought a tote bag with him.
A Rockies tote, yes.
Jeez, he's really proud of owning a shit organization, it seems like.
Seems like it could be a fine organization. He's just really bad at running it. And then they came back for meeting number 2, which occurred on Tuesday, probably yesterday from when you guys are listening to this podcast. And the players' big thing that they've been wanting is to raise the minimum salary. They want younger players to get paid more money. These are the guys who make up the meat of baseball. I think Saris reports something like 60% of Major League Baseball players are on the minimum salary at any given point, either 60 or 80, but that's still a very significant number. Much more than I think anybody would ever realize, because especially when you talk about guys being millionaires versus billionaires, really most of the baseball players are simply thousandaires, which I mean...
And I feel like this is also, unfortunately, why the owners are able to kind of be holding so strong right now, is because a guy like Garrett Cole, a guy like Jacob deGrom, Max Scherzer, the dudes making those $30+ million contracts, missing a few games here or there to them isn't as big of a deal as someone who's on their rookie contract. Someone like David Peterson missing 2 or 3 weeks of the season vastly changes how much money they do make over a season, because they are in that lower, minimum salary level. And it almost seems like the owners know this, and that's why they're being so tough on their numbers and not really budging, because the players are going to ultimately seemingly have to make these concessions because the owners just won't.
Definitely, and the casuals will be much more aware of those guys than the other people in Major League Baseball. Like, you're going to be more aware of a Garrett Cole than a David Peterson, and that's going to drive the narrative more so in just general national media.
Well, even the number you just said, like I had an idea that it was going to be close to 50-50 with minimum salary guys versus the dude actually making like significant money. But I didn't know it was like going to be as high as you even said. And even then, like the fact that it is 50-50, half of the league is making, of course, if you're a normal person, you would love to make this amount of money. You wouldn't complain at all. But you also got to remember, you don't throw 95 miles an hour. You don't create billions of dollars in revenue. Like, they do a unique skill that allows them to get paid this amount of money. They still need to get paid what they deserve, especially when they bring in this revenue.
Definitely. When you're bringing in this much revenue and you're better than 99.999% of the world at anything, like a minimum salary is something that's kind of a relative term. And to get back to that minimum salary, the players offered to raise that salary from $600,000 to $775,000. And $800,000 was the number they were striving for originally. So even that $775,000 was a concession. I know it does sound like a lot of money, but again, we're dealing with people who are profiting tens of millions of dollars a year on this. I think the minimum salary is something that definitely should be addressed. The owners came back with $615,000, which is an absolute slap in the face. And the last time this minimum salary was negotiated was 2017. That's when it rose to $600,000. If you simply adjust for inflation from 2017 until today, you have to make it $650,000 to keep up with the $600,000 that was agreed upon then. So the owners are basically telling the players, we're going to give you less money relatively to how your dollars work in the world right now.
Yeah, they're trying to bend them over a barrel and show them the 50 states right now. And like, it's just, the thing that scares me is I think it might end up working, and that's what I'm not particularly happy about. But like, oh man, I don't know what the players are really going to be able to do, because the owners have sculpted it in such a way where the players, unfortunately, are going to look like the bad guys despite not doing anything wrong.
Definitely, and that's kind of brilliant from the owner's side, because when these meetings concluded, they basically said publicly, and every baseball news outlet said this very publicly again yesterday, that they don't care about missing games, that they're willing to miss games to get this negotiation to go the way that they want. So the owners coming to the table 2 days in a row and giving numbers back to the players while giving the players the opportunity to rebuttal. Now the players are going to have to make their rebuttal as spring training becomes closer. The owners have said, like, the owners are going to have the ability to villainize them for making an offer that doesn't seem realistic the next time they do come to a table, and then we're going to probably miss games because of it. So it's either you guys take our modest concessions or we all lose. And like, that's just not really a fair spot to put the players in. And they're doing it before spring training, which I mentioned last week is one of the owner's biggest one of the players' biggest bargaining chips, because they don't make money for that, but the owners do.
Yeah, it's always sunny in Philadelphia. Was it? Dennis says you got 24 hours to control the media, the headline, basically. And right now, like, I feel like the owners are controlling it. I've heard nothing from MLBPA, and that's like the one thing that seems like maybe you should make some comments. I don't know. Like, everything that's coming from the media is the owners will lose games. The owners are doing this. The owners are doing that. There's not a lot coming from the player side, which is unfortunate because, again, it's going to paint the players in a bad light, despite them just looking out for themselves. There's nothing wrong with what they're doing. I don't understand the siding with billionaires over millionaires still. No,
definitely. And they are driving the narrative, which I think is important. But I do think that this is a big bluff from the owners. And they have called the players bluff originally based on Max Scherzer saying we're okay to miss games because we have this war chest to pay out the minimum salary guys for the future. I think the owners saw right through that and were like, all right, let's see you guys actually do that. Let me see the money you're taking out of your pocket, Max, and paying out to David Peterson, again, to use the example again. But you don't like say we're okay to miss games on January 24th if you actually mean it, you know? And like, they were very willing to miss games in 2020, but it was a very different situation then. Like, no one really knew what was going on, so I think everyone was like, let's just hunker down, have a negotiation, try and win as much as we can. But there was a great thread on Twitter from Maury Brown, who writes for Forbes and Baseball Prospectus, and he kind of outlined how badly missing games, specifically this year, would generally hurt the owners. Right now, Major League Baseball itself is working on a massive streaming deal with Apple to make local baseball broadcasts more accessible to everybody in the world, especially in terms of how painful MLB TV can be sometimes. They have more gaming partners now than they've ever had before. The interest in gambling is growing rapidly across the country. More states than ever before have legalized it.
And something that we've talked about too is that baseball is such a perfect sport for gambling. It's literally made for gambling. So like, the fact that it's becoming more illegal everywhere, the fact that there's more money coming into it, baseball would be foolish to not take advantage of it.
Absolutely, especially when your biggest media market with two teams just legalized it less than 2 weeks ago, as we know about gambling in New York now. And this year, there's a big national broadcast kick of rate coming back to the teams. I'm going to say that again. And this year, there's an increased rate for national broadcast coming back to the owners this year. It's jumping up a number from the previous years from a deal that was signed a couple of years ago, I think, with ESPN and Fox. Also, the owners do have to pay back a substantial sum of money to a lot of the regional sports networks and national media for the rights that were prorated in 2020. And that's not something that's like very serious because that's a payment plan over years and years and years. But it is something that these owners are incorporating into their bottom line, which will affect a lot of these, again, poorer owners like Dick Montfort saying that it's difficult to own a baseball team sometimes. I don't make as many billions as I used to make. So I do think that right now the owners are making their power play. Like, they're sending their chips right now. Like, they are putting their forces on high right now. They're two-flank attack. They're using the media, and they're using just their own pull and strength they can because they know all of these things are true, and they know that this is their moment right now to make sure that they can save the golden goose. But baseball in the past has shown that they're willing to bite their nose off to spite their face, and I think that they're okay with doing that, again, with the media, their media they control on their side.
Yeah, no, it's unfortunate the narrative is going to be because the players should be holding out. They should be wanting to get all the stuff that they're asking for, or there should at least be some sort of middle ground. Again, this is collective bargaining. Players can't get what they want 100%. Owners can't get what they want 100%. There needs to be a middle ground, but the way that it's been portrayed by everybody, it really does seem like even with the owners saying we're willing to miss games, I still feel like probably the majority of people are going to see the players as the problem, which is just so undoubtedly wrong.
Definitely. It's just brilliant that they're able to paint the players' union as the villains.
Yep. And it's unfortunate because I think it's probably, we are moving forward, which is nice.
Yes.
And we're actually getting negotiations, which is something we didn't have for weeks upon weeks. But it's just, it really does seem like the players are unfortunately going to get screwed right now with the way that things are going. I mean, screwed is also relative because no one's really getting screwed here at the end of the day, but the players aren't going to really be getting much of a concession from the owners. It's going to be a lot of concessions on their part, which sucks because I don't watch baseball because Steve Cohen owns the Mets or Bob Castellani owns the Reds. Like, I watch baseball because Max Scherzer, Jacob deGrom, Francisco Lindor, Mike Trout. Those are the guys I want getting the money. I don't care how much money Bob Castellani makes on a given year for the Cincinnati Reds.
Definitely. I want to make sure that all the players who are making that minimum salary, who get shuttled up and down between the major leagues and minor leagues all year, like a guy like Travis Blankenhorn, who kept his car in Oklahoma City for months on end. I want to make sure everybody gets their fair share here. And I also want to make sure that these systems that seem to be broken, like arbitration, the Super 2, get fixed, because these are going to affect the long-term success of this game and the way that young kids want to be a part of it, you know?
And that's something that the owners cut out now, right? They were going to kind of fix arbitration in the Super 2, but now they said, never mind, not interested.
Well, that was that negotiation that we mentioned at the beginning, where the players wanted that pool of money for guys who were in their first 2 years of making the minimum, who performed at a high enough level to have a $105 million bonus pool to be given out, and the owners said 10.
Yeah.
And that was something that they were negotiating in lieu of Super 2 rights, which is kind of a weird, funny number that they make somehow out of thin air. And then the MLB said, if you guys don't want that, it's okay. We'll just keep arbitration exactly the way it is. And they're like, you guys also hate arbitration. Like, you're just doing this out of spite. And they're like, yeah, we are. We're doing it out of spite.
Fucking Rob Manfred, man. God.
He's doing a good job, though. He's doing a good job in terms of the owners. He's doing what he was hired to do. Not like a good job in terms of us.
In terms of baseball, yes.
Yeah. He might be willing to kill the game, which would be really sad. Really,
really stupid. And I guess that's a perfect way for us to jump right into our interview with Nick Pollack, right? Because there's really no more update here on the labor negotiations. So.
No, yeah, we just got as negative as possible, so now we're going to get positive, because Nick is fun. Nick is, I'd say, bubbly. And we break down a lot of the pitching, a lot of the Mets free agent targets, especially on the pitching side, how the Mets' current starting rotation does stack up. We're to have some takes on Max Scherzer, and then we talk a lot about Pitcher List and PitchCon, which is starting this Wednesday that Mark and I are actually speaking in, which is Pitcher List's yearly baseball conference. So I think you guys will enjoy it.
Super excited. Here's that interview. All right, guys. So now we have another guest back-to-back weeks. Look at us on the Mets'd podcast. We're bringing you guests during the offseason because, honestly, there's not much baseball to talk about. And we have a guy here in Nick Pollack who knows a lot about baseball, specifically on the pitching side. Pitcher List. You might have heard of it. You might have heard of him on Twitter. Make sure you guys go show him love and support. Nick, thanks for coming on. How you doing, man?
What is happening? Thank you so much for having me on here. This is almost as touching as when you brought me onto the 5,000 person space that you guys were doing for Max Scherzer. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, that was chaotic. I remember you sent me a Discord and a DM. You were like, let's get in here. Get me in.
Well, I wanted to talk about Scherzer. You weren't talking about like the injury part of where he's going to be always good through the contract.
Oh, great.
I think that's a good part about it.
Is that where we're going to start then? Should we just start talking about Scherzer then? Because like we said, you're the pitching guy, and there are a lot of things with this Mets rotation, bullpen, everything to talk about pitching wise. I guess let's start off with the biggest guy that we just got, Max Scherzer. You maybe aren't as hyped as some of the other Mets fans around the world right now, but, you come in with a good reason.
I will say, too, it's really nice to have Nick on because while we try to be as unbiased as possible about the Mets, Mark and I are both psychotic, diehard Mets fans. The whole reason you guys listen in is the whole reason we even have this show. So, Nick, give us an objective take on Max Scherzer for a change.
Well, I need to clarify things. I grew up in Brooklyn. I just wanted to be happy in life, so I was a Yankee fan. I'm so sorry saying that on the Mets'd podcast. My God, what am I doing? As you know, we treat you like the little brother. We want you to be successful. All that aside, I'm kidding completely. I actually stopped really being a Yankee fan when I started doing this stuff. I root for the pitcher on the hill. I've rooted for Chris Sale against the Yankees because I just want the guy on the bump doing well. And I truly want you guys to do well, too. It's, when New York does great, everything is great. So Scherzer, I remember being excited for you, not to mention that Scherzer is just in our city now. This is amazing. Scherzer's slider is incredible. I think that's kind of forgotten a lot about what actually is it about Scherzer. No, it's guts. He's a workhorse. No, his slider is one of the better ones in the league. It has been for ages. Gets a ton of strikes. Swing strike rate's 24% last year, which is way above average. That's among the best out there. Fastball is the only area of concern. Every year it's gotten a little bit worse and more hittable inside of the zone. If you remember in 2020, he actually had like a 3.5, 3.7 ERA because of the home runs he allowed on fastballs. It made us a little bit concerned going to 2021. As we all know, he had a fantastic sub 2.5 ERA last year, so Scherzer should be fine. But I think long term for you guys, like what I talked about in that space was if he's hurt, there's an insurance policy with the Mets, so don't worry too much about the money of this. But he's not going to pitch and be bad at any point. If he's bad, Scherzer just stops playing.
Yeah.
He has so much pride in this that he's going to go out there and do his best all the way through, and you should be thrilled about this. A lot of big albatross contracts that you see, Albert Pujols, like Josh Hamilton, you come to mind, these, Jacoby Ellsbury, all this stuff. But all of them kept going through it. Scherzer won't do that. So I'd be so stoked if I were you, as a quote unquote Yankee fan. I'm jealous you have him and we don't. But yeah, I mean, I'm so thrilled for you guys. I hope he succeeds.
Yeah. How does it feel to see the Mets going out and making a splash that feels very Yankee like that's got to be, I know you said like you're more of a pitcher fan now, but like that's got to be a weird change in reality of what's really happened.
Well, first of all, thank you for acknowledging it.
Saying it.
Too many people forget that. No, I mean, again, my fandom is much more diminished than it used to be. But yeah, there is a sense that it used to be the Yankees being the only team that would go off and do this. 2009, we quote unquote bought that championship, right? Because we got CeCe and Burnett and Teixeira in that offseason. And yeah, we haven't really done that. We've been smart. Like we didn't go off and pay Patrick Corbin, for example.
Yeah.
But it's still very weird to see these giant names that clearly will help the Yankees not, be on our team. I think actually Scherzer, though, did say he didn't want to be a Yankee, to be fair.
I don't know
maybe not.
I think the Yankees just kind of spurned Boris a few times recently since the ownership has not changed, but since it's been passed down. And I think that he knew that he needed not a new ally, but a more powerful one.
Well, this is great then. If you're saying that's a Boris problem, then the Yankees won't get Correa, which would be wonderful.
That'd be great.
I think all of the universe will be back to normal if Correa is not a Yankee. It just seems so wrong on so many levels. It's like it's all just a play put on, a facade, like all the drama. If Correa becomes a Yankee, that should not be allowed.
To me, it makes perfect sense because the Yankees I grew up with relished being the villains. And what's more villain-like than bringing in your own arch nemesis who is so good and so talented to work next to you and on your side?
He's not that amazing. He gets hurt all of the time. And finally has his one healthy season the year before his contract. It's like, this isn't what we want. Don't do that. I don't know. I mean, yeah, I like the fact of the Yankees being the villain and stuff. I mean, I don't like it to the fact of like having Aroldis Chapman as your closer, who is actually a real life villain.
Actual villain.
But, the persona of like, yes, we need a team to hate that is all inside of the drama and soap opera of the majors for non-actual nefarious reasons. Hi, Astros, sorry. Like, that's a good thing. I would embrace that. But yeah, so yeah, we got to spend some more now. What the heck are we doing? Let's go. Let's be the Mets,
Well, that's a crazy sentence to say
out loud. That's the soundbite. That's going to be on the quote board for this interview.
Let's be the Mets.
Yes,
right,
absolutely. Good. No, I mean, you guys must be stoked about Scherzer.
Oh, over the moon stoked. We were
right?
we were so excited. After that Spaces, we went out together with our other buddy Ernie, who we've mentioned this podcast a few times, got drunk in Astoria and did an entire drunk episode afterwards. That's turned out to be our most listened to episode of this podcast, but basically by far at this point.
Hammered, like debatably, like on that verge of like, drinking a little bit too much. And it was, I'm still buzzing to this day. Like, it's just, that's one of the biggest moves I can remember in Mets history. To bring him, and then on top of Jacob deGrom, who, I mean, he's unbelievable too.
I know. Okay, so you guys, if I were you, I would just be thinking, how can we plan this out so that you make the playoffs and deGrom and Scherzer are healthy? Like, yes. I feel like you can't have both.
And that's kind of the reason we've brought you on here today, because this Mets rotation, besides for Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer, has a lot of either holes or just legitimate question marks. Sure. So we want to see if you can see a path forged ahead by the rotation as it currently stands to get the Mets to, say, that magic number of 90-ish wins to get that postseason appearance.
Well, I see something. And we can certainly talk about this. I'm going to tell you right now that I think collectively, I mean, obviously I talk sometimes or a lot of the time in the fantasy baseball world, and you can kind of see, you can get a grasp of how people think of players in general just from how the fantasy baseball world reacts. And the fact that I don't think I've had to talk about Taijuan Walker once this offseason, I think says a lot.
Yeah, I agree with that. He's even right now, I'm doing my first batch of NFBC drafts. He's going off like in the 200-300s. So he's the kind of guy who you're hoping gives you like a 4.2 ERA and 150 reliable innings.
The thing is, though, that's what the Mets need. He's a very important cog in the machine for the Mets this year because, I mean, I'm looking at the free agent signings, right? And my first thought was, you need depth. You need guys you can rely on every 5 days or so. I see Tyler Anderson out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's actually not a bad signing. I was actually at the game, the doubleheader game where he pitched against Marcus Stroman. I got a really good look at him, and yeah, he could have gone 5-6 innings that game. I think he went almost 6. Like, just that is fine. Like your old Steven Matz kind of thing.
Anderson,
it would work.
He is fine, but with Anderson, you always run that risk that he's just like kind of close to being unusable. Like if one thing goes wrong for Tyler Anderson as he goes through, like, let's say a 3-year contract, he goes from being a guy who sits at like 4.2 to 4.8, and suddenly he's just not someone you could pitch in games.
I'm not disagreeing with that. With a guy like Anderson, I think you can make a pretty discounted deal with him, and the 3rd year is just kind of like does not matter. It's about this 1 year. Right now, you need to capitalize that you have Scherzer and DeGrom at their peaks, and to make sure that you survive this season. You just got Starling Marte. Amazing signing. I think actually my favorite signing of this offseason so far, just based on under $100 million for an elite outfielder in my book. That's just so incredibly good for you guys. You have this like really nice moment. Atlanta might be losing Freddie Freeman. The Nationals are not threatening whatsoever. The Phillies still have a lot of their same problems where who is going to be their 5th starter. I actually even put it out to Twitter and no one knows. No one knows who's the 5th starter for the Phillies. And then there's the Marlins who are still a year or 2 away considering their offense. So you have such a ripe opportunity, and little things like a Tyler Anderson deal for a year or 2 can help bridge the gap because you don't want to overwork DeGrom. Scherzer will be fine. Scherzer, I think, will be okay by the end. But you don't want to be in a situation where it's like, well, we need DeGrom because if we don't, then there's no one else to turn to. And someone like Tyler Anderson can really help.
Yeah, I feel like we've brought up a guy like Yusei Kikuchi. I know James is super high on him as like someone who would be like a perfect fit for this rotation. I guess just from like your opinion, like what do you think about Yusei?
Yeah, he's good and bad. I'm going to say that about a lot of guys. He has a good ceiling where if he's throwing 96 consistently, Kikuchi did that a good amount last year. He can be really stellar with a cutter and a slider that can both miss bats. When those 3 pitches are working, it's gorgeous because batters can't tell the difference between the cutter and fastball, and the cutter actually moves a significant amount. The thing is, though, he sometimes goes down to 94, doesn't elevate effectively, loses command of it, and the slider and cutter on their own are not good enough. So it's, Kikuchi's kind of looked at as a guy that if he goes to a program that could really help with pitching development, there might be something to untap. It's kind of why I think I've heard the Yankees, but even though the Yankees are kind of weird, do they actually do well with pitchers? I don't know. We like to think so, but I don't know. The Mets, I don't know where I'd side with that. I mean, Dan Wortham was the best thing that ever happened to you guys.
Jeremy Hefner.
Slider. No slander of our boy Hef.
We have Jeremy Hefner.
I'm just
skilled pitching coach.
Nothing against it, but I'm just talking about like, things that we've internalized in our head of what they have done directly. Worth slider was just a game changer.
Yeah.
The Worth slider though was also a Tommy John mechanism. So
well, maybe yes or maybe no. Like how is that the reason why? I don't actually. I would maybe even make an argument that it's a lack of pronation on that, which is a good thing because you're supposed to just stay straight and go straight down on the Worth slider and less of the actual twisting. Like I talked to Lance McCullers and he says his slider is like throwing he calls it a pizza, like how he delivers it. Where he's like, he leads with his pinky across his body. That is not good for your elbow.
That sounds terrible.
But it's really good for throwing sliders. The Worth slider being completely different, staying completely on top and going down through and not having as much spin, but relying on the gyro of it to go down. And that was super effective and came out harder too. But anyway, what I'm getting at is I don't know if Kikuchi to the Mets is exactly the fit for him. But I think he would be beneficial. Like I'm seeing this list now of free agent starters, and boy, is it very thin right now. Oh my Lord. Yeah, Josh Tomlin's not the answer.
No.
Neither is Jacob Junis.
There is one guy that's the answer.
Where'd you start, with the Jays only?
No, I just went down. I went down. I mean, who? Okay, they're obviously the big names of Carlos Rodon and Clayton Kershaw.
Yeah.
Do you guys actually believe the Mets are going to get one of those?
I think the Mets are going to be involved with Rodon. I think probably pretty heavily. We know from someone that they were involved with him last year when he was non-tender, but he decided to stick with the White Sox, basically with equal contracts. And while Rodon doesn't really give you that stable floor of innings that you think you're going to get from an Anderson or a Kikuchi, You could probably sign a Rodon and an Anderson. You might as well shoot for the moon with upside for one and then get the oatmeal with your other. You know, it's like kind of like when you're getting breakfast at the diner and you get oatmeal for yourself and then you get pancakes for the table.
Especially because
I love that.
those first 100 innings that he threw last year were just like, he was one of the best pitchers in baseball. So it feels like James said, if we're going to take that risk, let's go for the big shot here. We're not taking a risk on like an older Clayton Kershaw, is he going to be healthy?
That makes a lot of sense. I remember, one of the joys of what I do is watching these young guys do something new and be amazing. And if you don't realize, Carlos Rodon averaged at his peak 93.5 on his fastball velocity before last year. Yeah. There were games he sat 97, averaged 3.5 ticks higher than his previous. It's unbelievable what he did. But yeah, I imagine he would burn out. That's the problem there. And if you want to actually make a World Series team, you can't include, like, Rodon will help you maybe get there. But I don't know if I could depend on him in October.
I think with Rodon, you almost have to tell yourself, similar to DeGrom this season, that you're getting 120-ish innings, 120 to 140, and we're going to see where they fall, especially based on how the team is. Because, again, you said last year he died. Like, I have a stat here I've used for Rodon a few times, but...
He survived. He's around.
Well, listen, 12.7% of his fastballs were 98 miles an hour or higher from April to July when he was incredible, and it was less than 2% from August through the end of the season. And when he had that fastball going in at 98 or above, because he cracked 99 more off a few here and there.
So nice.
And it became like a whiffable pitch to go along with the slider. Like when you have that fastball as a lefty working up in the zone and getting swings and misses, like you're almost unhittable. And I think a lot of these guys would benefit from Citi Field, Rodon, Kikuchi, and Anderson, the three we mentioned, because they're all fly ball pitchers. And they're all coming from environments that were less advantageous to fly ball pitchers than Citi Field, which is massive and suppresses exit velocity still for reasons no one, the smartest minds in baseball, cannot figure out. I think we have that kind of built in that we can get these pitchers who may not look as good to other teams and they'll be better for us.
Oh, man. I love that you mentioned like lefties to throw up an end to righties. That's James Paxton at his peak. And that's, this is the thing of my life is I just get giddy about pitchers doing good things. And Rodon did that a lot last year. Honestly, I think the best path for you guys, the number one target should be Luis Castillo. That makes the most sense to me. He's an innings guy. Yeah, he's not going to. I think he's going to keep doing what he's doing. Sure, he had some problems last year. Has to do with the cold more so, and just get him out of Ohio, man. It's he's going to be a little rocky. There are times when everyone's going to be upset. Like, I don't know, Castillo can't strike anybody yet. His fastball's too hittable, all that stuff. But he is going to survive the full year. He's going to be very helpful. That would be the thing I'm dreaming of the most if I were for you. Because, Rodon, Kershaw, the reason that they didn't sign so early is because they wanted to wait. People want to wait and see how they're feeling. And then there isn't a major impact play after, which is why I was suggesting like Tyler Anderson. Pineda could even help. I
have Pineda on my list. Pineda is just one adjustment away because he actually last year had the lowest vertical approach angle of any pitcher in baseball on his fastball. Okay. And I think that a Mets team that has, with Hefner, leaned into the high four-seam fastballs could find a way to get Pineda back to not like, I'm not expecting anything more than, a 4.2 over 150 innings, but just to get to that with stability for a guy who still has, I believe his plus pitch is what? Slider?
Slider. No, yeah, Pineda has a slider working. It's like, doesn't matter what else happens. He could lob in his fastballs.
Yeah, almost 40% whiffs last year. So that's someone, again, it's nice that the Mets have a pitching environment that you could think possibly get more out of guys rather than less.
You want to know the craziest thing? I think one of the biggest deal breakers for the Mets this year, the biggest influence of your season, is if Carlos Carrasco can get a slider and change it back.
Yeah.
The crazy thing that I normally see about older pitchers, and as they start degrading, we start thinking, they're not going to be what they used to be. I mean, you guys probably know it's velocity. Velocity is the first thing that it goes, and that's really the biggest indicator of a failure in the future. Carrasco barely lost a little bit on his fastball when he returned last year. And keep in mind, he didn't have a normal offseason and everything. He just kind of got thrown into it again. Now you have a proper offseason. You have the velocity still there, hopefully. I mean, you imagine it is. And we had moments of both the slider and his changeup working last year. I think there's still something in the tank here for Carrasco, and that potential of being that, sub-4 ERA, 120 whip with like a 25% strikeout rate is still there for Carrasco. I hope you get the longevity, but there's still something there, and it can really turn the tide for the Mets.
I'm thrilled you said that because I've been beating that drum for the last few months. Carrasco last year he was legless for months because he busted the hamstring and he tried to come back very quickly from that. And then we found out at the end of the season, he even had a bone chip in his elbow that he was pitching with.
Is that right?
Yes. And
I didn't even know that. And he still had the velocity.
Exactly,
It's going to affect like the slider more. Oh, that's such good news.
And
sorry for the bone chip though. But
of course, yeah. It's a healable injury.
It's great news.
easy surgery. But he was doing a lot of tinkering last year. He had 5 different pitches as his lead pitch in the arsenal in a given game last year between his four-seamer, his sinker, his curveball, his changeup, and his slider. He had won each of those games where that pitch was his most thrown pitch. So I just think that you got to just chalk it up for a lost season of Carrasco after another lost season for Carrasco. We're on 2 years of lost seasons, and I do think that there is still something valuable he can give this team.
Absolutely. The funniest thing is that you say curveball in there. All I can think of is, that must have been a bad night if his curveball is his most thrown pitch.
Well, he was doing some weird stuff too, where like, especially because we all remember we talk about every single time he pitched was giving up a home run in the first inning or giving up some sort of runs in the first inning, and he was also refusing to throw anything but fastballs in the first inning for a lot of those starts too, which was like he was really trying to figure out what kind of pitcher at least maybe he wants to be in the future. And I expect, like you said, with a normal offseason that like hopefully he at least has a better clue, a better feeling, better health wise, that he can come back. Because like he was really, really good at times. I know he's older now, but like he should be very valuable to this rotation if all things do go right.
Absolutely. I remember actually being at one of those games where I was saying, Carrasco, throw your changeup more. Your slider's been bad. And
we saw you at that game. That was the Friday night Reds game.
The first inning.
Yes.
Right. And it was just like, oh, no. This is first inning, 3-run shot or whatever off a slider. I was like, it must have been a slider to Chris Bryant.
No, Jonathan India.
No, that was a different game.
Oh, really?
Chris Bryant hit this one, I'm pretty sure. Slider in the first inning. I was like, don't throw a slider, Tim. Throw a righty change. Nope, never mind. Not going to happen. Maybe, Jonathan, did I see you at Jonathan India game?
I remember seeing you at one of the Friday night games because I think we're also both with our dads.
No,
maybe I'm thinking of a different game.
I think the Marlins were playing because Ernie was there.
Yes, it was a Marlin. I went to a Marlin game. You guys were there in like the end of September.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, it was a great time.
Also crazy that we just have multiple games where we've just seen each other at Mets games.
And also, of course, Michigan OSU, which was the funniest thing ever.
Oh,
that
a bathroom
cracked me up, man.
I couldn't even like think straight. I was like, Nick, of all the faces of all the tall men in the world.
I mean, so yeah, if you don't know, obviously, James, giant OSU fan. My sister went to Michigan, and my cousin is getting his PhD at OSU right now.
Nice.
And he so I was like, fine, I'll go to the game for you because you're in town. I'll be nice to you as the older cousin. At the end, we finally won, and I'm like trying to hold it in inside this OSU bar. No one knows I'm a Michigan fan.
No, you're wearing plain clothes.
I'm waiting for the bathroom. I'm even like in my jacket. I was like, you know what? Let me just go to the bathroom before I leave. And Shiano comes out of the stall. That's like right in front of me. I couldn't believe this. And you gave me a look. You're like, oh, hey.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to be here. It's like, shut up. You're the only one who knows, man.
And I even remember my original interview with Pitcher List. I think we did a nemesis bonding over that. So you're like, OSU, Michigan. I was like, OSU, Michigan.
Yeah, we really did a great job taking advantage of the one time we actually are involved in the college football playoff. We did beautifully against Georgia. Oh, man. What a sight.
Like we talked about, DeGrom, Scherzer, Carrasco, Walker. And then there's like this other gluttony of pitchers that the Mets have that are just all kind of fighting for this last hypothetical spot that exists in a 5-man rotation where you've got, McGill, you've got Yamamoto, technically, Peterson, maybe even I'm sure they're going to try to see what Zapucki's got again too. I think there's a clear favorite there, but what is your take on just this whole next group of Mets pitchers?
So, okay, Tylor Megill. I need to say it like that every time. I need to emphasize it. He should be solid for you. I think his fastball is actually it's an above average fastball to me. And that's a pitch that constantly is there for Tylor. When he went on that nice run to start the year, the changeup was glorious, and then it fell apart. It wasn't there consistently down the end. The slider just needs to be a called strike pitch. It just needs to get in the zone enough. It was a sub 40% rate last year. Typically, when you have a third pitch that isn't going to miss a lot of bats, it should be above 40% zone rate or so. Essentially, that should just be a mix-up. And I don't know if that could really be this. It was a sub 60% overall strike rate. You want to see like 63, 65. That's when you feel really good about them. Sub 60% is when you start, tugging. Go, uh-oh, that's not what you want to see. So I hope to see some consistency with McGill with that changeup, and maybe that slider gets better. But just because of the fastball, he'll be competitive for you guys. And that's good. He's going to hold on to that. I'd be really surprised if the Mets move past Tyler, especially considering, as you've already talked about, the question marks of DeGrom's health and Scherzer's health and Walker's health and Carrasco's health. So you're going to have these, if Tyler can stay healthy, he will just pitch the entire season. The other names that you mentioned, I have to just mention, there's Trevor Williams.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, he's a name. Yeah.
Yeah. He's either TLs or T-dubs, depending on the day.
Oh, jeez.
That took me a second.
But back in the day, I wrote for Fangraphs the whole thing about like the mystery of Trevor Williams, which I think is actually the most cliche title. And it's the last time I ever said The Curious Case of, and I realized that you should never title an article The Curious Case of. But it was super weird. Like, how is Trevor Williams doing this well? It was the end of 2017 and beginning of 2018, or maybe it was actually 18-19. But if you guys remember how good he was for a moment, it doesn't make any sense. It still doesn't. Fastballs somehow don't get crushed as much as they should. Secondary pitches, sometimes he can keep those down effectively, like the slider, but he's not someone you want to depend on, especially as he gets, I think, worse with age right now. He's not getting better. Sean Reed Foley is so interesting.
He's something.
And I just can't believe you guys have him, because I remember being so hyped about him when he had like a 10 strikeout game against the Yankees for the Blue Jays back in like 2017. But he's probably not going to be the answer. David Peterson's my favorite one. I think we kind of forget that David Peterson was really good for a moment in 2020. Then he got hurt, and he hasn't really figured it out since. But there's opportunity there. He's still young. That's the one I'm crossing my fingers for. Lucchesi, you're not going to see him. So he got Tommy John in like the end of June, I think.
Yeah.
So much for that. We still sell our Lucchesi for Gazy shirts.
There you go.
But which actually even applies more, I think, in New York now than San Diego. We got to change the colors on that. But yeah, it's not looking good. This is why you need a Tyler Anderson. You need a Gucci. You need Zach Greinke. Go get him.
Yeah, but Greinke's had that issue with wanting to pitch in New York. Again, that was the Yankees, and it was also like over a decade ago.
All right, there's no pressure with the Mets.
No,
zero.
No. Fans are very calm, cool, collected.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Peterson,
your listeners are great. If you're listening, if they know to listen to you guys, they're clearly smart.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. They know
any sort of stereotype you have of a Met fan is not your listener. So
definitely not. And they know that Jordan Yamamoto is a non-entity on this team next year.
Yeah, that was funny. The funniest part to me is that the only reason he's a Met is because it was like March 23rd or whatever, and the Mets were like, you know what? Let's just get a ninth starter just in case. So then Yamamoto actually has to pitch, and he gets hurt right away.
Yeah,
and it's just the funniest thing to me.
Oh.
They were saying, you know what, we're gonna do this just in case, and still that didn't even work. Man,
I've had some harsh words for Jordan Yamamoto on this show, and I will have more if he ever comes back.
He's trying his hardest, man. He's a kitchen sink dude.
He's working, I know that, but I don't see ever there being a pathway to him even having a 4.5 ERA over 100 inning stretch.
No. But did you know his middle name is Owen, so his name is Joy?
Okay, well, you know what?
Okay.
I'll take that one. I need Hawaiian.
It sounds like it should be, right?
Yeah, I think the less that we... Oh, wait, that's not his middle name?
No, he's lying.
Oh, my God. I was about to say...
Is that a canned joke, or did you just come up with that?
Of course I came up with it. Come on, James, you know me by now. This is just never ending.
That was quick for sure.
That was ridiculous. I don't even know what to say. I had nothing. I was going to say something about David Peterson, but I don't even care enough anymore.
David Peterson's fine.
I feel like always with him, the big, connection that Mets fans make with David Peterson is that he feels like Mats, but with worse stuff, because he has the horrible body language. He's another lefty pitcher that was like a hyped up guy that was supposed to be kind of like the answer, but one of the Mets fans hyped him up. He was a first round pick. Still at the end of the day, Mets fans see a first round pick and they think he's going to slot into the rotation at least as like a middle of the rotation guy. And he's just kind of been like underwhelming, especially like you said after that really exciting 2020 where you're like, oh, here he is. Maybe we got something.
Right.
I know James has talked about a lot more on this podcast, but is there something that maybe he needs to do more of? He should do less of? what seems to be the big problem with him almost?
So there are certain times when things come alive for Peterson, like when the slider gets really good at times, it's great, but it's just consistency. We really haven't seen him get into a groove with all of his pitches. There was that, again, in 2020, there was a little bit of a stretch where that was working. I think there was actually one start where he was doing the Blake Snell blueprint, actually like elevating four-seamers well.
That Rays start that he pitched in Tropicana this May.
Okay. Yeah. But then it just goes away. And it's like, oh, well, never mind. That's that. And I will say something really quickly. You mentioned Steven Matz. And I just want everybody to understand, Matz is going to do really well in St. Louis. Not because he's not a Met or not a Blue Jay. It's because the Cardinals' infield defense and overall defense is Gold Glove worthy,
elite, and in that ballpark too.
It's the best defense. It's why Adam Wainwright, I think, did so well last year. It's why Jack Flaherty's going to do really well. Dakota Hudson's going to do really well. Mike Michaelis is going to do better than he should.
Kwang-Hyun Kim
is going to be good for them, and you're going to hear talk radio, go off about Steven Matz, like, oh, what have we done? Like all this stuff. He should have been hours with a 3.5 ERA. And like, it doesn't work like that. That's not how it works. So just don't think about Matz.
Mark, I finally remembered our bet that we were talking about the other day that we made a couple months ago. It was about Giovanni Gallegos versus Paul Sewald. Paul Sewald, who's going to have the higher strikeout rate this year?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
All right, nice, yeah.
Okay, good.
It's going to be Sewald.
I'm on the Gallegos side.
Guy.
I didn't know who the second guy was. I forgot. I was like, it's going to be Sewald.
100%. Paul Sewald, the one that got out of the way.
I mean, what do I know? They're relievers.
I mean, why would you discredit everything you've given us over the last half hour?
They're relievers. They're relievers. Starters, I can help with that. I can do that. No, Sewald's filthy. Super high CSW rates, if you don't know that, called strikes plus whiffs. Amazing correlation to strikeout rate and just overall performance. Yeah, Sewald is really deceptive and just flat out filthy. That slider is crazy good. Gallegos is great, but I think Sewald is just a little bit better.
Me too. And now, Nick, I guess before we go off here, because this has been a lot of fun. I mean, we could just talk about pitching
this has been amazing.
For hours.
We're already done. This is okay. Yeah.
We keep going, man. I don't know.
This is a wonderful break between PitchCon and PL7, all that kind of stuff. This is wonderful.
Well, it's a great moment. Maybe you should plug PitchCon, tell the listeners what it is.
Oh, right.
And PL7.
We didn't do that. I was just so excited to talk.
Well, I also saw you gave me an insult in our rundown that I sent to you.
I did. No. Well, you said
technically he's my boss. I can go right to the Better Business Bureau right now.
You said, who is Nick and what does he do? And I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to do Arnold Schwarzenegger here in Kindergarten Cop. Obviously, I'm going to say, who is your daddy? And what does he do?
I don't know that one.
You don't even, what?
Yeah, bro, I think I'm younger.
James, you don't know who is your daddy and what does he do?
Certainly not. No, that was organic.
So I understand the insult now. Absolutely not. And go watch Kindergarten Cop. It's the funniest thing ever. They just thought, what is the most ridiculous thing we can make Arnold Schwarzenegger do? Oh yeah, be a preschool teacher. Like that's what the movie is. But anyway, so PitchCon is something we run every year. So the third straight year we're doing it.
Who's we?
We is Pitcher List, and you guys are going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And right, I forget. Yeah, hi, Pitcher List. Go there. It's an amazing site. We're changing it also in 2 weeks to do incredible things that I can't say, but we're revealing what it is on Sunday night, and oh my God, it's incredible. Anyway, PitchCon, you should go to pitchlist.com/PitchCon. You're going to watch 44 hours live streamed there, 11 to 10, Wednesday through Sunday. It's going to be panels from everybody across baseball. Mark is there. James is there. We're going to have Pitching Ninja there. We're going to have Enosaurus there. We're going to have DVR. We're going to have just everyone is there. It's amazing. We're raising money for Feeding America. Half of everything we raise, not just proceeds, just everything we raise is going to Feeding America. We have a goal every year of $10,000 raised. We have prizes that you can win for free. You don't even need to contribute to get them. We have a signed Tyler Glasnow baseball, courtesy of Mark over here, and many other prizes, including subscriptions and the coveted lifetime PL Plus subscription, which we'll give out during PitchCon as well. So tune in, absolutely free. Pitchlist.com/PitchCon starts 11 a.m. Wednesday, January 26th. Be there.
Amazing.
Yeah, we'll be there.
We'll definitely be there.
yeah.
My panel, I'm talking about fantasy baseball, doing player debates on Thursday. And Mark, you're on Saturday, right?
Yeah, I'm on Saturday doing it with Pitching Ninja. And what did you say? David Mendelson was his name, right?
Yes.
Oh,
you
see?
know his name. You got it right. You don't be more confident. You got this.
I remembered. I wanted to make sure it wasn't like a Robert Mendelson or something like that. I knew the last name. But yeah, we're going to be talking about content creation, which obviously it's what I do every day. So if you guys are interested in that, definitely check out PitchCon. I'm super excited. It should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, me too.
And if you miss it, it's going to be on YouTube as well at our youtube.com/pitcherlist. You actually can see the previous years, which are still great. From 2020 and 2021, just to get a sense of. You also see me with a lot less hair. So I just shaved my hair in quarantine, and it's terrible. Like I actually just shaved my hair. Oh, never again.
No.
Never again.
Nick, that was a great plug. And before we let you go, I love fantasy baseball. You love fantasy baseball. Mark doesn't love fantasy baseball quite as much. And this will be a little bit of a intro to PitchCon, kind of, but a little bit, but not really. Give me one Mets sleeper, value, breakout, or bust for this coming fantasy baseball season. You don't have to give me one of each. Just give me one or two total.
Oh man. Okay. To appease Met fans, I'm going to tell you that Jeff McNeil is better than he was.
Okay.
So I'm going to tell you right now that do not undervalue Jeff McNeil. I think he is someone for your fantasy teams that will get playing time for you guys and is just much better than what we saw in 2021. But yeah, Carlos Carrasco, absolutely. I think there's a lot of hope still in the changeup and the slider, and especially considering in fantasy realm, he's going after the 23rd round. So in your standard 12 team where he's not even getting drafted, he's exactly the guy that you can see after the first start if it's actually working or not. If the velocity is still there and he has his changeup and slider, things are going to be great for Carlos Carrasco. And there you go. You have a serviceable starter for your 12 teamer for the cost of free. So definitely keep an eye on him.
We'll even know that by the time spring training rolls around. By the time we see him through even one competitive inning, you'll be able to get a good sense of what Carlos Carrasco will be this year.
We'll see. We won't quite know about the slider or the changeup, but as long as he's still sitting 93.5 or 94, then like there's a good chance that he can come out swinging, or at least making them swing and miss.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know if he's swinging. I hope he doesn't swing anymore.
Yeah,
He looked bad at the plate
no
last
more
year.
swings
Yeah,
for
no-
any
Oh,
pitchers.
God.
No more. Right? Just please DH. We're on the same page about this.
I kind of like the pitcher hitting that now.
Well,
I like the
okay.
different rules a little bit.
Can I ask you guys a question before I go? I love asking this to everybody.
Yes.
What is your most controversial baseball opinion?
Ooh, I got one.
Mark. Yeah.
I like the extra inning rule last year. I think it's electric. I think that
I like it too.
it gives me the opportunity,
Still
like
fine.
especially when it's like 10 o'clock at night, Mets game wraps up. If I see the Detroit Tigers and Kansas City Royals are in extra innings, I'm
Dude, it's the
turning it
worst.
on because I know something's going to happen. Like, and especially now with sports betting in New York, oh my God, that extra inning rule is electric city. Like that is must watch
right.
TV.
Right. Yeah, like it's the worst when it's like the 12th inning and like games are still going on. There's no extra inning rule. And I have to write my article. I got to finish this. I got to say, I got to complete it and I can't because they just won't end and no one is happy now. Just for the sake of baseball that it needs to keep going. It's just, no, man, it's so electric. Exactly what you said, Mark. I'm on board.
I like that too. I didn't even think that was controversial. I can't think of a controversial take I have right now in terms
Well,
of baseball.
I'll help you.
Yeah,
I
please.
think lefties they have to step off to throw to first.
Ooh.
Okay, sure.
I hate it. I hate it so much that they have this stupid thing just because they're a lefty and not a righty. And if you want to help the game with like stolen bases and stuff, you can always do first move. There's, guys are going to steal more. But I just think there's this also so many questions about, is this a blocker or not? And a lot of times they get away with them. Just don't do it. You got to step off. Just step off.
Yeah, lefties balk every time.
I found my controversial baseball take.
Go ahead.
I would do away with interleague play.
What?
Wow.
I have no desire to see the teams in separate leagues play, especially now, given the current landscape of baseball, that there are different rules in the different leagues. I like playing more games in your division, more games against teams that are geographically accessible. I want to bring baseball old school.
What year were you born?
1936.
All right.
Wait a second, James. You my understanding of the Subway Series for years, as a Yankee fan, I wouldn't get so excited about this, but all my friends that were Mets fans, this was your World Series.
Well, you see, we're not in that world anymore, Nick. Those days are behind us. I don't care.
Tides will change, James. You're at the peak now, but in 5 years, you're going to be like, wait, I need the Subway Series back.
We need to prove they're better than the Yankees.
You don't want to have the Subway Series.
I think maybe a couple series like the Subway Series is useful. The A's and the Giants are useful. The Cubs and the White Sox are useful. But the vast majority of interleague play is just, to me, basically a waste of time if there's no actual bred rivalry out of it. I think that it just becomes kind of a situation where you're playing against teams. You're like, the way the Major League Baseball schedule is ridiculous, the way it is right now. My big take is that they should adjust the way they do it, because the way they schedule it seems like they have a very low-grade developer who's making the schedule and putting in the format, because the Mets will play the Diamondbacks, the Orioles, and move on. The part of the schedule is over. And I don't understand why that is the case. Like, we should be playing against teams that are more pertinent to the end of the year standings. I want more games against the Phillies, more games against the Atlanta. Yeah,
you should look into who does the MLB schedule. It's by hand, and I believe it's this old couple who's been doing it for like 60 years.
Are you being facetious?
I'm not.
Oh my God!
Wait,
it's not a program. It's not
like
just a system.
It's like a very famous thing. And I don't know if it recently ended or not, but I remember this in my head of like just the people who make the MLB schedule.
That's crazy.
If that's very really famous, then what's just famous?
I just did the PitchCon one, which was organizing 80 plus people for 4 days, and my God, I messed it up. I can't imagine them doing 162 games for 30 teams. And I'm so sorry that they have to play the Diamondbacks twice in 2 weeks.
It's just it just doesn't make any sense to me when I see the Mets schedule come out. It's really stupid. I don't like it. I want to see you play the teams that are more important to where you end the season, especially the fact
that makes sense.
Unless we put all these teams in a 1 through 16 bracket before the playoffs, why are we playing them so often during the regular season? This is your competition.
Do you guys feel that every single team that finishes above 500 should make the playoffs?
No. Absolutely not.
Why not?
Because you have the American League Central, which no team should make the playoffs outside the White Sox.
Well, you can get
Watch out for the Tigers this year.
So you win your division, you have a bye, for example, and then you have a 1-game playoff and stuff from there.
Yeah,
I don't think 500 is like a barometer to being like you're good. You know what I mean? I think 500 is like you're okay.
It's hard.
It is hard. I'm not saying it's easy, but
you're above average if you go above 500.
You are, technically, but it's like, is that above average because you win more than half of your games, or is the above average you won more than the median games won by a major league team that season, you know?
Yeah, but isn't that just every season? Like, how are you supposed to differentiate that?
Yeah, that's fair. I feel like the way we've talked about, especially like with the labor stuff, with the expansion of playoffs, we've been like first 2 teams in each division. I think that's probably like the perfect way to do it, because really at the end of the day, that probably covers what you said about the over 500 teams. Mm-hmm. And then that covers also like, you get the AL Central who's going to get like the Tigers in there at 80 and 82 or whatever they'll be.
Wow, look at you giving the Tigers 82.
I love the Tigers this year.
I would love to see it. Probably means that Spencer Turnbull pitches meaningful innings, and that would be cool.
Is he he got Tommy John last June, correct?
Yeah, something like that. So like probably like September he can come back and maybe make some sort of impact. That would be amazing. I would love to see that.
Pigeonhole take.
Yeah, but I'll say this though. In 2020, I know we felt like it was a different thing, but 8 teams in the playoffs, the teams that were supposed to be there at the end were still there. Mm-hmm. And that was so fun watching the Marlins beat the Cubs. That would have never happened.
We had a day of it where it was like the 3 straight days of at least 4 games of baseball.
Wasn't it the greatest thing ever?
Incredible.
It was March Madness for baseball.
You're saying like, let's not have more people in the playoffs.
Oh, no, we're fine with a general amount of more people in the playoffs. You said every team over 500. You're
well, that essentially is what
baseball.
That was, though. I mean, that's half of the league, and that's 15 teams a league, so 7 to 8 teams.
Yes, that's true. They're settling between, I think, 12 and 14 teams anyway with this negotiation.
Right. Yeah. I'm all for 14, guys. I'm in for it. More baseball, more excitement. You know, just like, let's just go crazy. Look, we just saw the playoffs this weekend. That was the best thing ever with football. And I hate football. And that was amazing.
God,
that was so great.
It was amazing. But then that comes from the better teams still being in. Like, if the baseball does expand to the 14-team playoff, I would love to see strong benefits given to the better teams. Because that 2020 season, we saw teams like the Dodgers and the Yankees really take their feet off the gas pedal because they were very comfortably winning their division. Right. They had nothing left to play for even 15 games out of a 60-game season. If suddenly you get to a spot where you don't have anything to play for 35 games out of a 162-game season, it'll make the fantasy baseball playoffs nearly impossible to navigate. Could you imagine the previews that we're going to have to be doing on Pitcher List when we don't know who's going to be pitching for the Dodgers and the White Sox?
And I still cannot believe we put out the previews that we do. Huge hats off to the entire team, graphics side and writing side, getting those playoff previews out. Oh my God, that's insane.
Remember those scheduled previews last year murdered my Sunday night. Those were insane.
Are you saying you're not going to do them again? Are you
Yeah, I think I'm out on those this year. Well, I mean, with the other thing I'm going to be doing, I think it's going to be a lot.
Well, if you guys don't know, James did an amazing job, like incredible job with the schedule stuff last year. That was such a huge help to everybody. Help for me. So
everybody and me.
Yeah, like the way I see it, if I'm using it, then like y'all should be using it too. I am that egotistical about what I use. And no, it was such an amazing thing, and it takes a lot of work. So great job with that. Thanks for indulging me with the extra question. I think it's just a fun one. I'm curious what you guys thought.
Yeah, listen,
of course.
We've got nothing else to talk about here. There's still no baseball. As soon as we end this, we're going to go check our phones to see if Passan has any updates with any sort of actual information that could be useful. James gave me the one. What do you got, James? It
was a thread. After he said that initial tweet, he tweeted 7 minutes later, 8 minutes ago. I'll just read it now. Listeners can hear this. At the risk of being Debbie Downer, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves here. The meeting was contentious. There is a lot left to work out before this new labor deal. This could still take a while. But the fact that it didn't go backward when it could have, W, period. Put a question mark, W, period, is how Jeff Passan ended that.
All right,
that's
Jeff.
good.
That's good. Jeff is our man. We are so lucky to have Jeff Passan.
I love Jeff Passan.
I really cannot express that enough.
I love him. I like him.
Yeah, we've had some contention with Jeff Passan here on the Mets'd podcast.
We understand that low Mets harvest clicks, and Jeff Passan leans into that more than he probably should.
Oh, what did he do?
He's had a flurry of tweets going back.
There's just like James says, like it's just Mets get clicks. We understand it from a business standpoint. He's smart.
Wait, hold on though. First of all, I know I've been borderline insulting at times in this podcast, and I apologize profusely. It's all a bit. It's all for fun, all tongue-in-cheek, especially because I've gone through it all my life. Now, I understand so much of the Mets, I guess, plight, everything you guys have been through, that I feel that as great Met fans, you know how to embrace that and make fun of yourselves. Jeff, I imagine, was not being negative of it. You should be happy that he acknowledges that plight.
We're aware that he's aware, and I can respect that from the perspective of content creation, but once in a while, I'd like to maybe just back off for a second. Like when Zach Scott gets absolved of his DUI because of a court malpractice, and then people are like, the Mets jumped the gun in firing their GM who slept in his car in Connecticut with blue blood alcohol level over the legal limit. You know, like that is not really a reason to dunk on the Mets for prematurely firing a general manager who was sleeping in his car at 3:00 in the morning.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about Zach Scott for a while.
There's no reason to. There's really no reason to.
It was a good time, James.
Whatever you got to do.
Well, anyway, we've gotten unbelievably sidetracked here.
Yep.
As we wrap up our interview here with Nick Pollack. Nick, real quick, again, huge thank you for coming on and talking about the Mets pitching, everything. We really did go all over the place with this one, so I'm sure the viewers are going to enjoy it. Tell everyone where they can find you. Again, plug Pitcher List one more time, and anything you want to talk about.
I mean, we're our one-stop shop for baseball. Just come on by to pitchlist.com. We do everything fantasy, but we do everything baseball too. We have, I think, 15 to 20 podcasts on our network. You should definitely be checking out. But yeah, we have a mega launch on February 8th, PL7. I can't say anything more, but like, you really want to know what it is for any baseball fan, not fantasy. And of course, come by to PitchCon Wednesday, January 26th, 11 a.m. Win free prizes, all the fun stuff. You guys rock. Seriously, I've been very lucky this past year to interact with you guys a lot more. And it's just a ton of fun. I'm so happy you guys are in New York.
Yeah. No, it's nice, and especially when baseball does come around, we're gonna have to maybe get together, maybe do an in person, grab a beer, figure something out, and talk a little more Mets baseball with you.
Oh, definitely. I'm so down for that.
Awesome.
Definitely.
Thanks. Oh, my bad. You go, James.
Let's say anyone who loves baseball, make sure you check out PitchCon. If you like listening to me and Mark talk, we're both going to be there. Anyone who loves fantasy baseball, stay with Pitcher List all year. I got some big things going on this year with them, with Nick, of course, too. And it's going to be a great year of baseball, we hope.
Yes, without a doubt. Nick, thanks for coming on. And Messed Up listeners, that was our interview with Nick Pollack. Thanks for listening. Yeah, man. So it was good to get Nick finally on because I know you've known him a little bit longer than me, and I kind of know him through you. And he's a great guy, and being the fact that he's in New York as well, we see him at games all the time, like we mentioned in the interview. He's definitely going to be popping on here every once in a while during the season as well.
Yeah, for sure. Nick is fun. Nick is knowledgeable. Nick has he's been doing this for a very long time, very consistently, and he's good. So when Pitcher List started, Nick was a one-man show. He was literally writing up every single night how every single pitcher did, recording his own podcast, the First Pitch podcast. That was like a good preview, daily preview for fantasy baseball players, 15, 20 minutes every single day. So he was doing all of that after the games ended and before he went to sleep every single day for years and years and years before he added more people in. And this year, the new PL7 is going to be a major update. It really is one of the premier baseball sites on the internet. It's going to have some major additions to it. I think everyone is going to like a lot. And again, Nick's just fun.
Yeah, so make sure you guys definitely go support all the stuff he does. Pitcher List, find it, Google it. You'll be able to find all the Nick stuff there. Big thanks to him for coming on again. I know we probably said it on the outro of the intro or the interview, but we'll do it again. And then I guess the last thing we have to talk about here, just real quick, Hall of Fame got announced. I know this has nothing to do with the Mets because we didn't really have anybody on there, but David Ortiz.
Never really do.
Yeah, Big Papi got in, which good for him. He deserves it 100%. No Bonds, no Clemens, no Roland, no Andrew Jones, no
Wagner.
No Wagner. Yeah, Wagner's the worst one. Wagner deserves to be a Hall of Famer, no doubt. I mean, you've been tweeting a little bit about it, James. Real quick, what's your take on the Hall of Fame voting, everything that's been going on?
It's just, I'm so tired of the way we go about the Hall of Fame because we basically have these 500 or some odd writers who are kind of just stuck inside their own brains all the time. There's probably like, out of all the 500, IBWW? Is that IBWWA? Is that the acronym? I don't even care. International Baseball Writers Association of America. These guys are mostly just either way too stuck inside their own takes or just really behind the times, or they just really only care about themselves and they really only care about the way they interact with these players. And it doesn't make any logical sense in my brain to have David Ortiz, a guy who has been caught taking steroids, was never suspended by Major League Baseball, but neither was Barry Bonds, right?
Yeah, and Barry Bonds was never suspended.
Doesn't make any sense that he could be in the Hall of Fame on the first ballot as being a player who never played defense and had like 13 like really good years, really good years. But he wasn't someone who was really, if you look at the entire body of work, an elite player. He was a very good one. Doesn't make any sense that he can get in the Hall of Fame the first time and Barry Bonds cannot get in at all.
Yeah, and even a guy like Roger Clemens, who I hate that guy's guts. He's one of my least favorite players. He actually is my least favorite player of all time.
He was also a bit of a sexual predator, so.
Was he really?
You didn't know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. He had a relationship with a young girl for a long time.
Oh, no. Okay. That's not good. As a pitcher, very good. Yeah, that stuff, bad. No good.
Yeah, Roger Clemens had what was reported by the New York Daily News in 2008 as a decade-long affair with an aspiring country music star, Mindy McCready, that apparently started when McCready was between 15 and 16 years old and Clemens was 28.
Ooh, don't like that. Okay, well...
and he was a married father of 2 already.
Yeah, that's gross. Not great. Not good. Jerry Seinfeld part 2, but hey. Yeah, we can stop talking about that now. We're done with that. Anyway, the Hall of Fame, it's just...
It's stupid.
It's like... It was really... I remember when I was young, it was really cool, and it was something that I was like, this is amazing. This is so cool. There's this Baseball Hall of Fame, but it feels like you said, it's a popularity contest. It's an ego... check for all these writers. There was a guy who tweeted out today that he finally gave up his vote. He's like, I haven't covered baseball in 10 years. I don't know why
Brian
I have a
Costello,
vote.
the guy who does all the film recaps for the Jets games.
Yeah, he's like, I gave up my vote because I haven't covered baseball in 10 years. He's like, and the fact that Barry Bonds isn't in, I don't want to be associated with it. So, like, that stuff needs to happen more. But then you got a guy like Dan Shaughnessy or whatever for the Boston Globe, who's a certifiable moron. I mean, absolute idiot. Racist, whatever he is. He has some racial comments in the past about David Ortiz and other Latin players that you're like, you probably shouldn't still be having a job. And then, like...
He also has pubic hair for hair.
Yeah, it's the worst hair in the world. I mean, like, there's just a lot of people who don't have the proper information, who don't have the proper head between their shoulders to be making such an important decision for what is supposed to be, like, the telling of the history of the greatest game on the earth in baseball. Like, we're not having Barry Bonds, the greatest player of all time, maybe top 5 if you really want to make the argument because of steroids, not in the Hall of Fame, is just absolutely asinine. And even Jeff Passan dropped an article about it, saying that baseball's failing by not having him in there, and I agree.
especially like if you're not taking a hard stance against every steroid user ever. It just seems like the writers are basically picking and choosing as a unit who gets in and who doesn't and takes steroids. David Ortiz took steroids. Everyone knows that. I still think he's a Hall of Famer despite the fact he took steroids. And David Ortiz makes less sense than Bonds with the steroids because it seems like steroids would really fuel David Ortiz's massive success in the mid-2000s rather than Bonds, who had a Hall of Fame career before he ever even put head-in-knee home runs.
And then it also brings up the whole thing of like, well, what is a performance-enhancing drug and what isn't? Because guys took greenies for decades upon decades, and while that isn't going to make you physically stronger, well, definitely boost your performance without a doubt. I mean, you're more locked in, you're more focused, you're more amped up, ready to go.
And they also became illegal after a certain point, similar to steroids that were not illegal up to a certain point, or not a banned substance by Major League Baseball up to a certain point. So it's a gray area that no one has seemed to be able to actually create the differences in among and like actually look at this in a nuanced, intelligent way. So it's pure randomness, and it's just these writers just stroking their own egos year after year.
Yeah, it sucks. It's just become like a bit of it's a hot topic for the month of January when nothing's going on in baseball. And I feel like especially this year because there literally was nothing going on in baseball, more so than ever. But the Hall of Fame will go back to being what it is, and we'll talk about it again next January. That's all we got for the Hall of Fame for you today. But yeah, it's a great way to wrap up episode number 72 of the Mets'd Up Podcast. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for watching. If you're on YouTube, Mets'd Up Podcast. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at Mets'd Up. Follow James on Twitter at Jeter Had No Range. Me at Giraffe Mark. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen. Drop us a 5-star rating. Drop us a review. Really do appreciate it. And that's where we'll wrap it up. We'll see you guys next week for another episode. Maybe we'll talk about Once Upon a Time in Queens. Maybe we'll talk about baseball. Who knows? You'll have to find out then.
Thanks, guys, for listening. We'll see you next time.
Peace out.